Hello, everyone. My name is Neil Cody, and I want to welcome you all to week 4, where we're going to have a look at online research methods, focusing primarily on netnography. Before we get started, I just wanted to do a little land acknowledgement. I am in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded territory and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown dating back to 1725. And in Nova Scotia, we recognize that we are all treaty people. So just before I get into an overview of what I plan to cover in this presentation, I need to recognize Ash's contribution to this body of work. As I mentioned in our group chat, I took on the challenge of leading this week, not because I had any desire to work alone, but rather because I was trying to balance this workload with a family in desperate need of some vacation and downtime. So I reached out to Ash late Monday night and said I was going to give this a try, and he provided me encouragement and a foundation of information, which the following presentations built on. So as the expert in the field, I felt it was important we all benefit from his insight, and I basically lucked out and had Ash as my partner this week. So I want to thank him and recognize that his work's embedded throughout this presentation. I'm going to start off today by discussing the origins of netnography, then define it for you. I'll relate netnography to a traditional approach of ethnography. Then we'll go through the principles of netnography laid out in the Koznitz and Langer-Beckham readings. We'll discuss the ethical considerations identified with netnography before looking at the advantages and disadvantages of its use. And we'll wrap up by highlighting how you may be able to incorporate netnography into your research and what I would like you to consider in this week's discussion posts. Okay, so the origins of netnography. So Robert Koznitz developed the method of netnography in the field of marketing. He has a very impressive CV. He's currently a professor of journalism at USC Annenberg School for Communications and Journalism, and was previously professor of marketing at York University, the Schulich School of Business, where he also served as the chair. He invented netnography in 1995, and since then, he's taught digital research methods combined with marketing and branding theories, practices, and ethics to academics, as well as companies such as American Express, L'Oreal, Sony, Merck, Nissan, TD Bank, Campbell's Soup, and many, many more. The method emerged from the growing recognition among social scientists that we need to focus our attention on the virtual online world. Virtual communities on the internet are often as real as physical communities, and they have real existence for their participants, and thus have consequential effects on many aspects of behavior. And these are quotes dated back from 2002. This is the thinking around 1995 when netnography was invented. Fast forward to 2021 with the rise of social media, the widespread adoption of digital transformation and digital communities, and the value of digital information is recognized now universally. I've seen several definitions for netnography and sort of decided to combine a few quotes from Koznitz that I feel break down in sort of layman's terms. So I said netnography is participant observational research conducted online. It's essentially anthropology and ethnography applied to online conversations and interactions. And netnography analyzes the customs, cultures, and free behavior of individuals on the internet and provides useful insight. So netnography and traditional ethnography. If we think of netnography as anthropology and ethnography applied to online conversations and online interactions, let's break down how the two relate. So ethnography is about gaining insider status to a culture, and ethnography is the exact same thing. So it unfolds over a certain amount of time as someone becomes more and more used to the dynamics of a community and more comfortable participating within it. It's a reflective method, but it also involves a lot of observation and data collection. In one of the videos that I'll be sharing that you'll have access to in Moodle there, Koznitz outlines how an anthropologist using an ethnographic approach would traditionally physically join a particular culture. He uses the example of a Hawaiian culture. They learn the particular native language, live with those people, attend their rites and rituals until they are fully understood and until they're basically accepted as members of the community. A netnographer will go online and join in one of the various subcultures or groups, learn the language, learn the rituals, learn who the major players are, learn what the rules are for behavior and so on. So it's treating the online communities in a way that's cultural and see it as more of a conversation as a culture that unfolds as opposed to just dislocated from the data where it's just words being posted. So from a practical standpoint, it's also important to look at the logistics between netnography and ethnography and highlight really some of the benefits. There's a significantly less cost and time associated with conducting online research. No need to travel or commit months of research to research engagements. It can be easier to identify the participant groups that fit with your experiment and requires fewer hurdles to gain access to the group. The rigors of field work and the obtrusiveness into the cultural setting are for the most part negated in an online setting. And a significant benefit of netnography is that the online anonymity afforded to the contributors can lead to a deeper understanding, as according to Langer and Beckham, participants' ability to hide their true identities allows them to express attitudes, opinions, and experiences freely. Diving into the principles of netnography, netnography can be applied to different types of sites on the internet. So sites includes boards and news groups, independent web pages, email listservs, chat rooms, social media platforms. When trying to identify a community and resource that can help move your research forward, you should look for a focused research question, relevant segment, so topic or group, one that has like high traffic of posting, a large number of discrete message posters, so that's important too. You're looking for detailed and descriptively rich data, and it's important that there's interaction between the members that fit with your research questions, so that it's not just you engaging with the participants, that the community members themselves are engaging. When adopting a netnographic approach to research, there are 5 procedures you should go through. So making a cultural entry, gathering and analyzing the data, ensuring trustworthy interpretation of the data, conduct a member check to provide opportunities for culture members to give their feedback, and ensuring that the research has been conducted ethically. We're going to go through each in greater detail in the next few slides. So to make the culture entree, pardon me, it consists of 2 parts. So first, the researcher needs to construct a concise research question, okay, and that helps narrow down the community you're looking for. Second, the researcher needs to learn as much as possible about all the forms, the groups, the individual participants they're seeking to understand. So understanding the different types of people and the roles that they play within the community is equally important. I was once a business analyst and for a while, and whenever I would go into a new engagement, I would go into a new office building, I'd meet the staff, and the first thing I would try to do is to understand the power dynamics between the staff members. So who are the people I need to talk to? Who are the people that love to talk but who are gonna waste my time? Who are the people that just love to agree with the boss? Like, there's all kinds of different categories that you can sort of put these people in, and it helps to understand that in order to figure out who is going to be a benefit of moving your research forward. So Koznitz himself highlights the same process in ethnography and categorizes respondents as tourists, minglers, devotees, and insiders. So he states that tourists lack the strong social ties and deep interests in the activity. They often post casual questions. Minglers have strong social ties, but minimal interest in the consumption activity. Devotees have a strong consumption interest, but few attachments to the online group. And finally, insiders have strong ties to the online group and to the consumption activity and tend to be long-standing, frequently referenced members. Understanding these dynamics, they're going to allow you to contextualize the data you're gathering. So Cosnitz identifies two aspects of data collection that are pertinent to netnographic studies. The first is that the data the researcher directly copies from the computer-mediated communication of the online community members, and the second is the data the researchers inscribe regarding their observations in the community, its members, its interactions, and meanings. So you can further break this down into three types of data collection. So there's the archival data, which is the pre-existing stuff that's been there and available without any sort of research involvement. There's the elicited data, which the researcher is an active part of and creates with the members. And then there's also the field notes, which would be the observations and reflections of the researcher. So when conducting an ethnographic study, there's just so much instantaneous data available, it can become overwhelming. So coming up with a system for data analysis is important. Constructing some form of classification system to filter the useful data, coding, and synthesis and contextualization are all important steps in the analysis process. There are several software solutions that can expedite the coding, the content analysis, data linking, data display, and theory building functions. Ensuring trustworthy interpretation. So in this type of study, the focus is not on the individual, but rather on the behavior and the actions. And this is important, especially in an observational study, to avoid the perception that you are presenting a more carefully cultivated or curated self-image. To act with trustworthiness in data analysis, the researcher must recontextualize conversational acts, which often proves to be more challenging because you're lacking the all-important layer that comes with, reading social cues that you would normally see someone. Now you're just reading text on the internet. So we probably all at one point or another received a text where we've read tone in that text, and it may or may not have actually been there. So how the information is interpreted is a big challenge to the researcher. So to be trustworthy, the conclusions of the netnographer must reflect the limitations of the online medium and the techniques. So researcher can seek to strengthen their findings through triangulation of their netnographic data with data collected using other methods such as interviews, focus groups, surveys, or traditional in-person ethnographies. These all may be useful in researchers seeking to generalize their findings to groups outside of the online population studied. I wanted to throw in an important note from Ash here. Ash highlighted some of the key points within this reading, and I felt it was important to share in case any of you are considering conducting observational forms of research. Ash notes that Cosnitz rightfully distinguishes between the concept of trustworthiness and validity, and states that it's essential for interpretive-oriented qualitative researchers to consistently use the vernacular of the method. So papers by interpretive scholars that strategically use concepts that are intended for positivist-oriented researchers, like validity or reliability, are often poorly received by reviewers. So you should always remember that if you're doing interpretive research, your work will likely be reviewed by other interpretive scholars, and that this is the group you should be trying to convince with your paper. Member checks are important. Researchers conducting a ethnographic study should attempt to do member checks. Langer and Beckman researchers present that some or all of the final research findings should be presented to the people who have been studied in order to solicit their comments. And the same is true even when conducting traditional ethnographic studies. So according to Cosnitz, member checks within ethnographic studies are particularly valuable for three reasons related to the dissimilarity of ethnography from traditional ethnography. So first, it's because they enable researchers to attain and elicit additional, more specific insight into participants' meanings. They're particularly valuable for conducting unobtrusive observational ethnography. So basically, member checks provide an opportunity for added development and identifying any errors you may have made throughout the course of your research. Second, they can help clear up some of the contentious ethical concerns, which we're going to discuss in the next slide. while still preserving the value of the unobtrusive observation, because member checks are done at the very end when the data has already been collected. Third, and perhaps the most important, is that member checks can help establish an ongoing information exchange between the research and the groups that it's really unprecedented in traditional qualitative research. From an ethical standpoint, Cosnitz identifies two pivotal questions that emerge pertaining to research ethics when conducting studies like this online. And it's such an interesting thing to consider in the present, where we see people being held accountable for their conduct online more and more, whether it's them being celebrated or them being canceled. So Cosnitz asks, are online forums to be considered private or public space? And what constitutes informed consent in cyberspace? So although Cosnitz notes that there's a lack of consensus regarding the research ethics involved in conducting online ethnographies, he offers 4 recommendations. So the researcher should fully disclose his or her presence, affiliations, and intentions to the online community before doing any research. The researcher should ensure confidentiality and anonymity of the informants. The researcher should seek to incorporate feedback from the members of the online community being researched, and the researcher should take care and cautious position on the private versus public medium issue. So Cosnitz discusses the ethics of netnography and how the openness and availability of information is why he considers it to be one of the more ethical ways we can study social media. I encourage you to watch the 2 videos that I've shared links to in Moodle. Even if you might have seen them before, I found after reading these articles and watching them again, I gained even more insight. So I find the context of 2021 and the online experiences we're all having, and the way it's changing and the way it's changed in the last several years, especially the way the government uses the social media now, it's very sort of interesting to see, what we're kind of allowed to use online versus, what should be considered private. It's a very interesting, and there's a lot of disagreement. So I found those to be 4 very interesting points to sort of maybe negate some of those ethical issues that you might have in doing online research. Like anything else, there are advantages and limitations to netnography. So advantages for netnography is that it's much faster and more cost effective than a traditional ethnographic study. The ability to cover their identities allows respondents to express attitudes, opinions, and experiences freely, which provide researchers deeper insights into consumption motives, concerns, and experiences. There's also the possibility that the participants are open about who they really are, which adds an additional layer of demographic data, which can also be beneficial. For the most part, you're dealing with large pools of respondents, which provides an abundance of accessible data, which is really what we're all trying to look for when we're doing our research. The limitations of netnography draw from its more narrow focus to online communities, the need for advanced research interpretive skills. So it's not really something that the brand new researcher would probably dive into. The lack of informant identifiers. So if the identities aren't being displayed on the internet, it sort of presents some difficulty in generalizing the findings to anyone outside of this observed group. And of course, the ethical issues of, who owns the data, and can it be shared, and should it be shared, and how do you collect it, and can you trust it if once you've identified yourself as a researcher, and how do you go about, making sure you still get that rich data after you've identified yourself as someone conducting research. So there's a lot to think about and a lot to consider here with netnography. So the takeaways. So now that you have a foundational knowledge of netnography, you can begin to contextualize it around your own research. So Ash put together this cool assignment that I figure would have been some sort of an in-class assignment that we would have done, but because we're in sort of a different environment, I sort of repurposed it ever so slightly to provide a guide to help kickstart your thinking about how you might use netnography in your research. So start by identifying a concise research question that's relevant to your field and amenable to an and netnographic methodology. Think about the following. So identify forms, sites, groups that may be useful to investigating your research question. From this site or what's been identified, what sort of data could you potentially gather? How would you achieve some trustworthiness in your study? How would you seek triangulation? And if so, what would you do? How would you go about doing it? How would you engage in member checks? What are the ethical implications pertaining to research projects you would consider? So all these things are maybe the steps on how you go about doing it, and maybe that can be a value of you moving. Maybe that could be of value to you moving forward, but at the very least, I hope it kind of got you thinking about how you might want to use netnography, how you could use netnography, which is really what I'd like you to consider for the discussion boards this week. So this is meant to be a reflective piece. I'm much more interested in your thoughts and you applying this to your research than as opposed to like what journal articles you can find. My hope is that by applying these skills that we've kind of talked about here to your own research or your own situation, you might gain some sort of benefit from the discussion post. And it's something that maybe is enjoyable as opposed to just maybe like a checkbox burden that you have to deal with this week. So I've created 3 scenarios. You can address one, you can address them all, you can address 2 of them, whatever works for you, whatever gets you moving. The first scenario, do you belong to an online community? Do you belong to any online communities? And if so, what might researchers be interested in learning about your community? So, for example, I've been like a hardcore fantasy sports player for almost 20 years. My friends and I have, we have blogs, websites that we read and we contribute to all the time. So, knowing that we're that subgroup community, what might researchers be interested to know about us and why we contribute to those communities? The second scenario is around our most recent jobs. So I'm a faculty member at NSEC, but whether you're a teacher, an engineer, a banker, part of the armed forces, a business owner, et cetera, there must be some group you or some area of your business is trying to connect with. So can you identify what social communities you or your organization would benefit from learning more about, and what sort of information could you gather that would be a benefit? And the third scenario is the same as the last, but this time it's around your research. So what social communities might you benefit from learning more about, and what information could you gather that would be a benefit to your research? I can't wait to see what you all come up with. I'll be checking the message boards as much as possible. Feel free to send me a message on Signal when you post, and I'll jump in and check it out. I hope this presentation gives you a deeper understanding of netnography, and be sure to check out the supporting documents and links to the videos for additional resources if you're interested on a deeper dive. So thanks a lot, team. Have a great week. I really appreciate your time.